For the first time in more than 6 months, SpaceX has stacked both stages of its next-generation Starship rocket, creating the largest and most powerful launch vehicle ever fully assembled. It's not the first time. SpaceX has conducted 3 other full-stack Starship demonstrations, once in August 2021 and again in February and March 2022. But earlier this year, SpaceX, or at least CEO Elon Musk, decided to give up on the Starship upper stage and Super Heavy booster prototypes that had supported all 3 of those prior tests and, at one point, been considered a candidate for the rocket's first orbital launch attempt. Booster 4 and Ship 20 were consigned to a retirement yard by June 2022. By then, SpaceX had already begun testing the new favorites for Starship's orbital launch debut, Super Heavy Booster 7, B7, and Starship 24, S24. Almost exactly 6 months after the start of that busy period of testing, both prototypes recently reached the point where SpaceX was confident enough in their progress to combine the two for the most challenging phase of Starship testing yet. After an aborted pre-dawn attempt on October 11th, SpaceX technicians worked out some mystery kinks in crucial infrastructure located at Starship's first, nearly, finished orbital launch pad in Boca Chica, Texas. As part of a cart-before-horse gamble made by CEO Elon Musk that has seen SpaceX entirely remove legs from all recent Starship and Super Heavy prototypes in the hope that it will one day be able to catch the building-sized rocket stages out of midair, the company has built a launch tower 145 meters tall and outfitted it with 3 giant robotic arms. 2 of those arms are identical and linked together, forming a sort of claw that could one day close around hovering rockets to preclude the need for landing legs. A simpler third arm swings in and out to connect Starship's upper stage to the launch pad's power, propellant, and gas supplies. The chopsticks, as they're known, have another even more important purpose: assembling Starship rockets at the launch pad. Thanks to their sturdy connection to a tower with a foundation sunk deep into the Boca Chica wetlands and a design that forgoes a hanging hook or jig for giant arms, they are far less sensitive to winds than the immense crane otherwise required to stack Starship on top of Super Heavy. Sitting a stone's throw from the Gulf of Mexico, storms and high winds are not exactly uncommon. Around sunset on October 11th, SpaceX had better luck on its 3rd attempt and was able to move the arms into place under Ship 24. Weighing 100 tons or more and measuring 9 meters wide and 50 meters tall, the Starship was then slowly lifted about 80 meters off the ground, translated over to Booster 7, and lowered on top of the 69-meter-tall first stage. After about 2 more hours of robotically tweaking their positions, the 2 Starship stages were finally secured together. With the arms still attached to Ship 24, SpaceX workers were able to approach the rocket and prepare to connect the swing arms quick disconnect umbilical to Starship. Since they began qualification testing in April and May 2022, Booster 7 and Ship 24 have each completed several cryogenic proof tests, 8 spin primes of some or all of their Raptor engines, and several static fires of those same engines. Most recently, Ship 24 ignited all 6 of its Raptors, but the seemingly successful September 8th test was followed by more than a month of apparent repairs. Booster 7 last completed a static fire that ignited a record 7 of its 33 Raptor engines, offering an idea of how much further SpaceX still has to go to finish testing the Super Heavy. According to CEO Elon Musk, Booster 7 and Ship 24 will attempt Starship's first full-stack wet dress rehearsal, WDR, once all is in order. The prototypes will be simultaneously loaded with around 5,000 tons of liquid oxygen and methane propellant and then run through a launch countdown. Diverging just before ignition and liftoff, a WDR is meant to be more or less identical to a launch attempt. If the wet dress rehearsal goes to plan, SpaceX will then attempt to simultaneously ignite all 33 of the Raptor engines installed on Super Heavy B7, almost certainly making it the most powerful liquid rocket ever tested. Even if all 33 engines never reach more than 60% of their maximum thrust of 230 tons, they will likely break the Soviet N-1 rocket's record of 4,500 tons of thrust at sea level. It would also be the most rocket engine ever simultaneously ignited on one vehicle. SpaceX will be pushing the envelope by several measures, and success is far from guaranteed. It's unclear if SpaceX will immediately attempt a full wet dress rehearsal or a 33-engine static fire. Based on the history of Ship 24 and Booster 7 testing, it would be a departure from the norm if the company doesn't slowly build up to both major milestones with smaller tests in the interim. At a minimum, assuming WDR testing is completed without major issues, SpaceX will likely attempt at least one or more interim static fires with fewer than 33 engines before attempting the first full test. If both milestones, a full WDR and 33-engine static fire, are completed without significant issues, there's a chance that SpaceX could move directly into preparations for Starship's first orbital launch attempt without unstacking the rocket. In the likelier scenario that some issues arise and some repairs are required, the path will be more circuitous but should still end in an orbital launch attempt late this year or early next. After a successful launch of a Crew Dragon spacecraft whose crew included a Russian cosmonaut, a Roscosmos official struck a more conciliatory tone about relations with NASA. At a briefing after the October 5 launch of the Crew 5 mission from the Kennedy Space Center, Sergei Krikalev, Executive Director of Human Spaceflight Programs at Roscosmos, emphasized long-running cooperation between the United States and Russia in civil space, cooperation that has been strained since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February. We just continue what we started many years ago in 1975 when the Apollo-Soyuz crew worked together, and now we continue our cooperation, he said after mentioning a new phase of cooperation with the exchange of seats between NASA and Roscosmos. That seat barter agreement, completed in July, allowed NASA astronaut Frank Rubio to fly to the International Space Station last month on a Soyuz spacecraft. Roscosmos cosmonaut Anna Kikina, in turn, was on the Crew 5 mission. The agreement includes exchanges between Soyuz and Crew Dragon missions in 2023 and 2024. Joel Montalbano, NASA ISS program manager, said the agency plans to extend that agreement to cover Boeing's CST-100 Starliner, which, once certified for crewed flights, will alternate ISS missions with Crew Dragon. Once a Boeing gets up and running, our plan is to continue this cooperation on the Boeing missions, he said. As we extend Space Station, get partner across-the-board agreement to extend past 24, we will also extend the agreement. One seat remains open on the first operational Starliner mission, Starliner 1, after NASA announced on September 30 it has assigned astronauts Scott Tingle and Mike Fink as commander and pilot, respectively, to that mission. With another NASA astronaut, Jeanette Epps, already assigned to the mission, only one seat remains available for either a Russian cosmonaut or astronaut from another ISS partner, although NASA noted that Epps is also training on Crew Dragon to protect for other flight opportunities. NASA and Roscosmos, along with the U.S. State Department and Russia's Foreign Ministry, completed that agreement despite incendiary rhetoric at times from the head of Roscosmos at the time, Dmitry Rogozin, who appeared to threaten to abandon the ISS and allow it to re-enter. NASA leadership responded by emphasizing the professional relationship between the agencies in continuing to operate the ISS. That rhetoric has cooled after Rogozin was removed as head of Roscosmos in mid-July, replaced by Yuri Borisov. In late July, Borisov appeared to announce that Russia would end its cooperation on the ISS after 2024, the date the partners had previously agreed to operate the station, and not extend it to 2030 as NASA and the other Western partners support. However, Borisov and others, including Krikalev, later stated that the comment only meant that Russia would end its work on the ISS at some time after 2024, not necessarily immediately after 2024. We already talked with our international partners, and we are talking with our specialists in Russia, looking through the technical capability of the station to fly, and we understand that it makes sense to keep flying, Krikalev said at the briefing. We are going to keep it in the future, and we will see how long the station will be able to fly, and I think the main limitation is technical. He added that Russia is continuing to study plans for its own space station, but emphasized that work is still in its earliest phases. There is no final decision yet, but we are going to keep flying International Space Station until that station is built, he said. We don't know yet how it's going to be built, what kind of modules we will have, but I'm sure that we will stay in the international partnership. At last month's International Astronautical Congress in Paris, where Russian officials were notably absent, NASA Administrator Bill Nelson re-emphasized a professional relationship between NASA and Roscosmos on the ISS. He said at a press conference that he had spoken by phone with Borisov but did not go into details about the conversation. "I told him that I look forward to seeing him at the first opportunity," he said, although it's unclear when the two might meet in person. Asked at the Crew 5 briefing if recent comments by Borisov and himself were part of a deliberate effort to improve relations with NASA that had been strained by Rogozin, Krikalev smiled and said, "The answer is yes." He did not comment further.
And that wraps up today's episode. We would also like to take the time to thank you for your continuous support of SpaceX community, and if you'd like to show us that you enjoyed today's episode, please click the like button, subscribe to us and don't forget to click the notification bell, so you will know when we upload future content.